Well guys, Antec has got some new stuff to show. If you recall, last year we saw the Performance 1 FT. It took the industry by storm, and now they're introducing a new series which is called Flux. So let's talk about the Flux Pro. It's the big one. It's basically just a large full tower with some interesting elements. First of all, we have wood. Well, of course, it has to be American walnut. You might notice also, Eber, there's like a little bit of a texture to this metal mesh panel. So for some design elements, it's not just flat, but kind of the rest of the case does look like a more of a traditional, large full tower, but actually has plenty of unique elements on the inside. So let's go ahead and check out the white one. But first, huge thanks to our sponsors for making this trip possible: Thermaltake, Antec, Fantex, and Titra. Now looking at the white enclosure, first let's remove this front panel and show you this lighter wood. So this is ash. This is actually the first time we see ash being utilized in PC cases. Normally it's like pine or something lighter, but I really love this type of grain that comes through. And they might actually swap out the wood for maybe some form of anodized aluminum. So like a similar aluminum exterior, but all the way through in the bevels. So let us know what you think of this, but I do really like the silver wood on white combination. On the exterior, we have their traditional staple temperature sensor. And so we have a button on the top there. They do tell me that they've corrected the software to properly display GPU, both integrated and your dedicated GPU, plus CPU temperature over here, which is awesome. We can also, if we remove this ventilation panel at the bottom, look at this. Do you notice something weird, right? The power supply is facing this side, which is not normally what is found, and that is because of what they call I shift. So if I rotate the case over here, you can see the power supply, the cable area is facing you, and this is a really good way to save money of not needing to purchase a special power supply with the cables facing this way. And of course, if let's say your power supply is too long or something, you can simply install it at the back. This whole section just opens up. You don't need to use an extension, and yeah, just regular power supply. But this way you can potentially save on cable management in terms of those cables not facing the front of the area, because we do have a power supply, a hard drive cage right in front of the power supply with two 140mm fan options right in front of the power supply as well for additional airflow. And that's exactly why this power supply is facing you with the cables, as to not interfere with this whole area. Of course, the case will come with a dedicated fan hub for both power and ARGB. We have these really serious Velcro straps. I mean, these sound really good, and they tighten all the cables. These rubber grommets are one of the best I felt, because they're light enough, but they still have great coverage for when the cables do exit through. And we have this traditional paneling that allows the cables to exit and still kind of control everything. We do have dedicated hard drive cages and SSD caddies alongside the hard drive cage at the very bottom. Now when it comes to cooling, Antec is not skimping out on fans. The Flux Pro will come with 6 fans, so 3 140s at the front, 140 at the back, and 2 reverse 120s on top of the power supply shroud. That you can see over here, we have these panels on top of the power supply shroud that you can relocate. There's going to be 3 of them, so if you're not using any of these fans, you can close off the sections, and it looks like you can remove this entire power supply shroud for installation of the fans with just 2 screws. Nice and easy, accessible area. Of course, this massive motherboard area for all types of sizes. It is not backward facing motherboard compatible. Just they tell me that the tooling was a little bit too far into production, and all the other cases, like for example the non-Pro Flux, will support backwards facing BTF motherboards, so that's something to keep in mind. And also the front fan bracket. So we do have those 140mm fans that are non-RGB, and they tell us that they're trying to kind of limit the RGB aspect on both the black and the white enclosures for visual purposes. But look at this. You see these 5 dots, Eber? So this allows you to relocate this fan bracket in 5 positions, up or down, depending on how much height you need over here for radiator or a set of fan clearance from the front panel. And that means that you can install a 420 radiator here or at the top, not at the same time, but you can do simultaneous 360 at the front, 360 at the top, and even 360 radiator on this power supply shroud, as long as your radiator thickness and stuff allows that. The top panel bracket is completely removable for easy installation of the fans. We saw this with the Performance 1 FT. It's just 2 screws. You take this whole thing out, you install your fans and install everything back into the case. So that's basically it for the Flux Pro. A large enclosure, lots of airflow options, and the price range is between $169 to $179, which I would say is pretty fair considering you have 6 fans included. And if you want a large enclosure, definitely check out the Flux Pro. Now looking at the smaller non-Pro Flux, this is just a regular Antec Flux. It still follows the same design philosophy of the walnut wood, textured front intake, but now this has a BTF motherboard support, as you can see. So if you have that motherboard with backward facing connectors, it will come in handy here. This case will come with 5 fans instead of 6, but kind of the same idea, just in a slightly smaller footprint. Fans on top of the power supply shroud, lots of fan options for the front. Similar idea of removable top panel with a 360 support there, the front, a 140 at the back. So the price here is way more affordable. So if you're looking for something that's more of a traditional mid-tower, this is $109, and it's also patented. The back side panel, you can see, is perforated, and so this is patented because it allows the airflow to be intaked from the power supply shroud and be delivered directly for the GPU. So kind of an interesting design patent, we're told, but at least you do have those 2 options between the Flux and the Flux Pro. And then we have these little guys. These are the Performance 1M. If you recall, there's a Performance 1 FT, which is the full tower, and now we have the M version, which stands for mini. So these are Antec's ITX enclosures, and they look awesome. I love the anodized aluminum exteriors. Look at this little red tab. And also, actually, let me show you this one over here. Look at how gorgeous that interior looks, right? So it's a traditional, almost sandwich style enclosure. They are following in the footsteps of Fractal Design and other ITX cases where you can move the spine in the width configuration to give you more space in the GPU chamber or in the motherboard chamber. This will not support radiators. It's air cooling only. And we don't have that much information about it so far, but it does look really awesome. The middle spine is the only thing that is steel. Everything else is aluminum, feels really high quality. And of course, the Gen 4 riser cable will support SFX and SFX-L power supplies and dual 120 or 140 mm fans at the bottom to help you with either intake or exhaust, depending on your CPU cooler and GPU configurations. But now, speaking of cooling, I think Michael has some awesome stuff to show us.
I want to talk about what you want in an RGB fan. Do you want a halo effect? Do you want only your blades illuminated? Do you want the edge illuminated? Or do you want everything? And then you can pick and choose what to turn on and off. Well, look, Antec, with their Orbit series, they're going for the full Monty. They're going with an infinity mirror. They're going with a halo effect around the edges, and then every single edge of the fan frame itself is also illuminated. According to them, you can turn each individual zone on and off through their software. Now, for those people who want simplicity but high performance, that is where the new Nova series comes into the equation. This is a 3000 RPM high performance, high static pressure, high CFM fan that is made entirely out of LCP. Now, yes, I know that everybody's saying there's no way that you can make the frame and the blades completely out of LCP. Absolutely not. There are glass fibers in this whole concoction here. That is what has allowed them to make a white LCP fan. This is actually, I don't think this is the only one on the market, but it's the first one that I've personally seen. The other thing I should mention is that it has full daisy chain capabilities. No, it doesn't have any of those fancy pogo pin connectors. It's a simple daisy chain effect that on one end terminates in a very simple controller like the one you see here. So one of the modes caps the fan at 1500 RPM, the other at 2400 RPM, and whoop, there we go. And the last one is at 3200 RPM. So this is the other thing that I needed to mention. It's so important for people to use these inline controllers if you want your motherboard PWM to take over your fan curves, because the PWM is always reactive rather than proactive to temperatures. So what you're going to get is very, very high ramp ups in those speeds followed by that valley. So a peak and a valley, and that's the worst thing you can do for the acoustics in your case. And speaking of PWM and why you don't want to be running these at full speed, I want to show you, or at least you can listen to what these fans sound like when they're operating at 3,000 to 3,200 RPM. Now, this is relatively quiet, and it's still moving a lot of air. So look, listen. Very quiet. That is 3,000 RPM. Do you want that wailing in your case? Probably not. But that is why you need to make sure that high-performance fans like this excel in lower noise scenarios, and according to Antec, that is exactly what they've done. Now, I hear Eber, actually he's talking over there, he's got something else that he wants to talk about that is completely different from pretty much anything we've covered yet.
All right, guys, so this is a bit of a surprise from Antec. They're just completely approaching or entering a brand new market. I know everybody's kind of hopping onto the handheld gaming bandwagon lately. We've got, you know, stuff from RG, from Legion, from MSI, but Antec is, you know, they're jumping on the train. So I humbly present to you their brand new Antec Core HS. HS stands for Handheld Slide. So as you can see, this thing actually has a sliding mechanism where it just pops right out, and the display can tilt at a 15-degree angle, and you can actually see the spring mechanism at the bottom, and it has a really satisfying sort of click. It kind of reminds me of the old school flip phones back in the day. Now let's quickly talk about this display. So Antec decided to go with a 1080p 60 hertz display, which is it spans across 6.1 inches. Now the reason why they chose 60 hertz is to preserve on battery life, but for a handheld device, it is, you know, I would have expected or preferred to see a 120 hertz display or something faster. And the other thing is, when you flip it, as I mentioned earlier, you also get a physical keyboard, which is also backlit in RGB. And overall, from a form factor perspective, this thing is actually very compact. It's probably one of the smallest handheld devices that I've got my hands on. And it also comes in two colors. So you have white and black. So the white one actually does come with some interesting accents, like this really cool teal accents around the triggers. And if you look at the external kind of features, we have a power button, which functions as a fingerprint reader. You've got your USB-C port, which is USB 3.2 Gen 2. Flipping over to the bottom, there's another USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 and a micro SD card slot. Now, in terms of specs, you probably expect this thing to run AMD's Ryzen Z1 processors, but it's actually not. It's in fact running the Ryzen 7 7840U series processor, so the same chip that we're used to seeing on thin and light laptops. Now, I did spend a few minutes playing around with the Core HS. The 60 hertz display, I could definitely notice it, and the quality of the screen, especially for the price point, which, by the way, from what I've been told, is $799. So, yeah. Let me know what you guys think about it. That price point was actually going to get you an accessory pack, so Antec's going to sell you a case. You also get a screen protector. So I drop off everything. You get a screen protector. You also get a joystick cap, and interestingly, you also get a docking station, which is the last thing I want to quickly go over, which I think is personally cool. So this little docking station that comes with the Core HS, and it docks via USB Type-C. But the interesting thing is you also get a bunch of ports at the back. So there's power, HDMI 2.1, gigabit Ethernet. There's also two USB Type-A ports, another USB-C port that can be used to run two monitors, which is really interesting. And on the side, you have a full-size SD card reader and a micro SD card slot. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about handheld gaming. If you guys are into this thing, you know, comment down below. I'm Eber with Hardware Canucks, signing off from Antec, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.